Hey guys, tonight we're sailing into one of the most peculiar and oddly heartwarming corners of maritime history. Forget parrots and peg legs for a moment. Imagine a place where pirates didn't just loot and plunder, but gathered to vote. That's right. On this forgotten island, surrounded by mist and myth, the most feared criminals of the sea held elections. You're going to love this one, unless you hate boats, fishy smells, or the concept of democracy, in which case, maybe still give it a shot. It's a tale of hidden ballots, whispered debates, and a kind of pirate utopia you definitely weren't taught about in school. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Hey, comment below. What time is it where you are, and where are you listening from tonight? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're on a small wooden boat, drifting silently, surrounded by a curtain of fog so thick it swallows the stars. The sea laps gently against the hull. You don't remember how you got here, but your hands are resting on old oars, polished smooth by time. Somewhere ahead, a silhouette of land teases the horizon like a secret waiting to be told. As you row forward, the mist coils around you like lazy smoke. The scent is a blend of brine, damp rope, and something older, like wet parchment and forgotten rum barrels. Your boat creaks, a sound that feels less mechanical and more like a whisper of welcome. A lantern hangs near your knee, its flame struggling to stay upright in the mist. And there, rising out of the fog, is the shore. It's not a grand island. In fact, it looks rather ordinary at first glance. Sand, scrub trees, a few rocks worn smooth by centuries of wind. But you feel it, that tickle in your spine. The sense that this place holds stories beneath its soil, buried like treasure. You step out. Your boots sink slightly into the wet sand, grains clinging like stubborn memories. You half expect someone to shout "Ahoy!" from behind a bush. But no, it's silent. Not dead, just waiting. As you climb the low dune ahead, you spot a weathered sign half buried in grass. Faded letters, barely legible. Port Equinox, founded 1684. Freedom for all who float. Cute motto, vaguely poetic, but also a bit suspicious. Pirates were many things, poets generally not among them. Your eyes catch movement. A broken weather vane turns lazily in the salt air. Beside it, the skeletal remains of a wooden structure, part cabin, part watchtower, half collapsed like it got tired of pretending to be useful. You wander closer. The boards groan beneath your feet like they remember your weight from another life. Inside, tucked beneath rotted beams, is something far more surprising than loot. Benches. Not treasure chests, not weapons, just simple, sturdy benches arranged in a semicircle. And at the center, a raised platform. Not much, just a slab of stone, flat and sun-bleached. You sit. The wind plays with your collar. The air smells like old ink and crushed time. For a moment you imagine them, dozens of pirates, sea-worn and loud, gathered here not for mutiny but for a meeting. Her council. You can almost hear the arguing, voices rising not over spoils but over policy. Yes, this was a pirate parliament, or something very close, and that's when you spot it. Carved into the back of the platform is a date. March 6th, 1697. Below it a phrase in rough but clear script. One ship, one vote. Now let's pause here because yes, it sounds ridiculous. Pirates, those same people who tied cannonballs to traitors and used sea turtles as flotation devices, had voting systems. Not everywhere, not always, but here. It was real. And what's more, it worked. For a while. You find a rusted tin box, half buried beneath old rope. Inside, slips of paper, yellowed and brittle, ballots, names scrawled in ink that's run and faded. Caleb the Red, Isadora of the Shore, Big Teeth Tom. Not exactly names you'd expect in a ballot box, but hey, at least they were trying. You run your fingers over the paper. It crumbles slightly, soft like dried seaweed. It's humbling, really. These pirates, outlaws by every definition, took the time to choose their leaders. Not by sword, not by screaming match, well, maybe also by screaming, but by vote. Historians still argue about this place, you know. Some say it was a failed commune, others call it a myth. But then again, myths don't usually come with ballots. Your eyes drift toward the ocean again. The tide's coming in slow. Somewhere beneath those waves there are anchors, coins, lost shoes. Maybe even more boxes like the one in your lap. Boxes that tell a different story about pirates. A gentler one. Or at least, a more organized one. You sigh. The air shifts. And as the fog curls back around the shore like a tired cat, you rise, leaving the benches behind. The island is quiet again, but not forgotten. You keep walking, following a crooked path of flagstones almost swallowed by moss. Each step crunches softly beneath your boots. It's like the island is exhaling with every footfall, loosening stories that have been clenched beneath its soil for centuries. Beyond a patch of wind-bent trees, you find the ruins of a small harbor, what used to be Port Equinox's docking bay. The old wooden planks of the pier stretch into the sea like a tired handshake. They creak as if startled by your presence, but they hold. Barely. Boats once bobbed here, tethered with rope thick as a man's forearm. Now all that's left is a single post with a rusted bell and a sign swinging above it. The sign reads, Dock, 3 reserved for debate night. You smile. Only pirates would argue so loudly they needed their own parking space. You imagine them again, grizzled men and women with sunburned skin and accents from every corner of the world. Not all of them were violent. Some were farmers who got bored. Some were indentured servants who jumped ship. Some just wanted rum without rules. This island was their fresh start. You kneel near a pile of discarded wood and find, buried beneath, a layer of sand, a worn plank painted in bold letters. Public notice, all captains to report for vote by sundown. There it is again. That word vote surfacing like a stubborn cork. You make your way up a grassy incline to what looks like a forgotten square. At the center stands the sad skeleton of a notice board. Most of the parchment is gone, but one scrap clings desperately to a nail. You lean in. The handwriting is jagged but legible. Topics for council. Whether rum ration should be daily or weekly. Disciplinary action for goat theft. Nomination of first mate. Big teeth. Tom steps down. All members must be present. No excuses. It hits you then. This was more than an encampment. It was an experiment. These people didn't have a king. They didn't believe in divine right. What they did believe in was voting, even if the topics ranged from leadership to livestock-related crimes. This place was a society held together by paper scraps and promises scribbled in the margins. You wander toward the remains of what might have been a meeting hall, 4 posts and a thatched roof eaten halfway by time. Beneath it, scattered like seashells, are flat stones with names carved in them. Not graves, something else. Seats, assigned seats. Each stone bears a nickname, One-Eye Lark. Soup Hannah. Captain Flinty, no relation. And beneath the names, not dates, but tally marks, 5, 10, 13. Could that have been votes, terms, appearances? You sit on the stone marked Soup Hannah. The name makes you smile. You wonder what she was like. Did she really make great soup, or was that ironic, like calling a tall guy shorty? Either way, she sat here, she spoke, she voted. Her opinion mattered. That's what keeps coming back to you, again and again. How much this place respected the voice of each person. Pirate or not, if you lived here, you got a say. Of course, it wasn't all peace and policy. Some records scratched into tree bark or etched on clay tiles tell of feuds, not violent ones necessarily, but deep rivalries over silly things. Who got the last hammock? Whose parrot was louder? Whether seaweed should count as a side dish. One particular story survives in a scratched-up diary fragment you find inside a nearby barrel. The writer, a man who only refers to himself as Wilco Scribish, describes a night of chaos when 2 crews nearly came to blows over who had authority to decide the annual Feastmaster. The solution? They voted, and the winning candidate was chosen by a tie-breaking vote from the town's only child, who had been bribed with pickled figs. Yes, pirate democracy in action. Historians still debate whether the island was a true republic or just a well-meaning mess. Some argue the voting was symbolic, a way to keep order without too much blood. Others suggest it was more genuine than most systems back then. And honestly, you're starting to lean toward the latter, because even if it was chaotic, it was theirs. You touch one of the stones again. The wind shifts. The sun is dipping behind the tree line, casting the square in long amber shadows. You realize something. They may have been forgotten by history books, but for a moment on this island, these people believed in something bigger than themselves. That's what built this place. Not gold, not power, agreement. You breathe in deeply. The air is cooler now, and you swear, just barely. You can hear faint laughter echoing from the trees. Or maybe it's just the wind playing tricks. Either way, it feels like the island is nodding, as if it's glad someone came back to listen. The moon is rising now, turning the island silver. You follow its glow along a winding trail lined with low, flat stones, markers perhaps, or just the pirate version of garden decor. The trees thin out, and in their place, a large, circular space paved in worn planks, cracked and soft beneath your steps. This was once a gathering place. You can tell by the way the ground curves inward, forming a gentle bowl. And in the center, slightly elevated, is a low wooden platform with a single stool. No throne, no captain's chair, just a stool, weathered, wobbly, profoundly democratic. You step onto the stage. The boards groan. Around you, shadows of the past settle like old coats. You close your eyes and listen, and soon they're all there, grumbling, laughing, debating. Pirates, smugglers, escaped servants, debtors, dreamers. They fill the space like smoke. Tonight's meeting, a vote on a new captain. You sit on the stool and imagine the scene. A circle of pirates sitting cross-legged or perched on crates, chewing dried mango and muttering. One by one, they nominate candidates. No shouting, no blood, just names. A woman stands. Caleb the Red, she says. Knows the stars, doesn't snore. A lanky sailor snorts. Aye, but he's got 2 left feet. You want a captain who trips over deck lines? Another raises a hand. I vote for Isadora. She talks the British Navy into circles. Never fired a shot she didn't mean. There's murmuring. A parrot squawks from someone's shoulder. Vote for Tom. Vote for Tom. Someone groans. You open your eyes and look around. On the far edge of the circle, half buried in dirt, is a plank nailed to a post, scratched in charcoal. Nominations close at moonrise. Candidates may not bribe with dried fruit. You chuckle. The temptation must have been strong. Who could resist papaya in 1701? You find near the platform a battered tin container with slits along the top, an old-fashioned ballot box. It's light, but something rattles inside. You open it. Inside, rolled scraps of parchment. Votes. Still here, still whispering. You read a few aloud in a low voice. Tom, because he owes me 2 ales and said he'd pay if elected. Isadora, best maps, worst jokes, but fine leader. No vote, still mad about the hammock incident. And there it is, governance with personality. These weren't perfect systems, but they were personal. Every voice mattered, and the voices had opinions, grievances, and jokes. You lean back on the platform, staring at the stars beginning to pepper the sky. Here, pirates practiced a kind of democracy that was, surprisingly, fairly ahead of its time. Officers were elected, leaders could be removed by vote. Even the ship's doctor, if there was one, was usually appointed by consent. Did you know most pirate ships had constitutions? Not long scrolls in gold ink, but simple agreements. How spoils were shared, how punishments were decided, who got the last cup of grog. Some of those articles of agreement still survive in archives. And historians, oh, they're still bickering over just how widespread this was. Some claim these systems were exceptions. Others say they were the rule. You pause, feel that. That's history nudging you, asking you to lean in, because here's the secret. People don't build fairness because they're noble. They build it because it works, because it keeps the ship from tearing itself apart. Because pirates too got tired of chaos. Of course, there were still mutinies. There were still jerks. Voting didn't make people perfect, but it gave them something to aim for, something to agree on besides plunder. A seagull cries overhead, late for dinner probably. The tide slaps the beach with more rhythm now. A slow clap for ghosts. You walk off the stage and glance back one last time. The stool is still there, the box still open, the voices still humming somewhere beneath the floorboards. And you? You're part of it now, not just a visitor, a witness. You follow the path inland, where the trees grow thicker and the ground grows softer, almost springy beneath your feet. The island exhales again, warm, earthy breath rising from its roots. You push past ferns and tangled vines until you stumble into a clearing where time itself seems to have paused. There, under a collapsed awning of branches and rotted beams, stands a strange little structure. 4 crooked walls, a sagging roof, and a painted sign still clinging above the doorway. Polling. Booth, no peeking. Yes, you read that right. A polling booth. It's barely standing. One wall has caved in and ivy is winning the long war, but you can still see the layout. Inside, there's a narrow table, a divider crudely made from ship planks, and 2 small wooden chairs tucked into opposite corners, like someone had once attempted to privacy. There's a shelf above the table, and on it, a glass jar filled with tiny wooden tokens, each carved with names or odd little symbols. A turtle, a mug, a skull wearing a crown. Pirate emojis, basically. You reach for one. Isadora, it reads. Burned in with a shaky hand, you turn it over and feel the grooves. This was someone's vote, someone's quiet choice. In an age where monarchs reigned by divine right and most people were little more than property, these people built voting booths. It's both hilarious and humbling. Somewhere to your left, a cracked chalkboard leans against a boulder. Faint writing remains. Next election, when the moon looks like a sour orange, bring your own chalk. Don't draw on the goat again. You imagine the ritual, the crews arriving at dusk, arguing over snacks, maybe slipping behind the curtain one at a time. A burly man ducking awkwardly to fit, a woman muttering curses as she tries to remember her chosen symbol, a parrot yelling the wrong name and getting shushed. This wasn't just theater, it was structure. Pirates, it seems, weren't as lawless as we were taught. They simply rewrote the rules to suit their world, a floating republic with anchors instead of borders. Historians still puzzle over these traditions. Was this polling booth just for show? Was it enforced? Were votes anonymous? No one agrees. Some say the tokens were stored in locked chests and counted by neutral parties. Others suggest there was a vote saboteur, someone whose only job was to mess things up just enough to keep things spicy. And then there's the legend of the Great Tie, when a vote split perfectly between 2 captains. The deciding vote? A drunken goat named Edwin who ate both ballots. The dispute was settled with a foot race. True? Who knows? But the fact that anyone believed it could be true says a lot. You sit in one of the chairs, which sags under your weight, but doesn't collapse. The air here smells of cedar and dried kelp. A breeze slips through the broken walls, brushing against your face like a whisper. Your voice matters here. And maybe that's what mattered most. Not whether the vote was perfect, but that it existed at all. That even in the chaos of cannon fire and tropical fevers, these people carved out moments of order, not out of idealism, but survival. You scan the clearing again. On a nearby rock, someone etched a message. Elected Caleb, he made stew, regret. Democracy in action. You laugh softly. Sight echoes in the stillness, startling a lizard that sprints up a tree like it just remembered it had somewhere to be. There's something deeply human about all this. A group of outcasts, thieves and dreamers coming together not just to steal, but to agree. On leadership, on rum rations, on goat-related offenses. It's messy, flawed, sometimes ridiculous, but unmistakably democratic. And here's the twist. Maybe we're the ones who've forgotten how wild that is. We think of democracy as lectures and debates and ties and suits, but once on this island, it was just people trying to listen to each other. Under a roof held up by driftwood and dreams, you rise and brush off your hands. Outside, the sky is beginning to shift. A purple haze swirls at the edges. Somewhere a seabird cries, a long, lonely note that fades into the wind. You leave the booth behind, careful not to disturb the tokens. They belong to the past now. But the idea, that drifts along behind you, still voting for its place in your mind. The trail narrows again, curving through a grove of twisted palms. Their fronds rattle softly overhead, like the rustling of parchment. You duck beneath a low branch and emerge into a rocky clearing where something glints beneath the dirt. You kneel, brushing aside sand with your fingers. A hinged wooden box reveals itself, small, locked but cracked open from age. Inside, scraps of parchment, water-stained and curling but still legible. Ballots, dozens of them. But they're not just votes. Each one comes with a reason scribbled beneath the name. A line, a sentence. Some thoughtful, some unhinged. Some funny enough to make you snort in the quiet. Voting for Isadora. She negotiated a peace deal with the Dutch and brought back extra cheese. Caleb, because he fixed the mast with his bare hands and said thank you when I sneezed. Not Tom. He told my parrot it was ugly. You pause, holding one vote longer than the rest. It's written in neater hand, almost careful. Voting against Flinty. I still respect him. I just think we need someone who listens more. You. Sit back on your heels, that's it. That's the line that rewrites the pirate stereotype entirely. They weren't just choosing captains. They were shaping a community. One vote at a time. With kindness, with pettiness, with pirate honesty. You. Look up, and for the first time notice a small archway built into the cliff nearby, barely taller than you. Above it, a wooden sign reads, Seat of the Removed. You step through, ducking slightly, and find yourself in a cramped alcove with a long bench carved directly into the rock wall. In front of it, nothing but open space, facing out toward the sea. There's no altar, no statue, just a heavy stillness. This was a place to sit and reflect or step down. Because pirates didn't just elect leaders, they removed them too. If a captain betrayed the crew, misused supplies, or simply got on too many nerves, they could be voted out. No blood, just ballots. Of course, not everyone went quietly. There's a legend carved faintly into the stone here about a man named Captain Lysander the Loud, who, upon losing the vote, climbed onto this very bench and gave a dramatic 40-minute monologue about betrayal, maritime destiny, and why everyone was wrong about the stew incident. When he finished, someone reportedly threw a coconut at him. He left. You sit on the stone bench now, imagining the ghost of Captain Lysander still mumbling behind you. The sea stretches before you, vast and unbothered. It's strange, isn't it? This island was surrounded by empires built on conquest and crowns, and yet here in the cracks of the map was a society where leaders were temporary and trust was measured one vote at a time. Historians, oh, they go wild over this. Some say this model influenced later democratic systems in the Caribbean and Americas. Others say it was isolated, a quirk of pirate culture, never meant to last. But what's more fascinating is how normal it all seems here. Like it wasn't revolutionary, just practical. You walk back through the archway and glance once more at the box of ballots. One of them is written in thick charcoal. Voting for Soup Hannah. She's the only one who can get Tom to shut up. Now that's leadership. You smile as you pocket a pebble from the path, not as a souvenir but as a reminder. Even in the wildest corners of history, people always look for structure, for fairness, for a voice. You return to the main path and the island seems to shimmer slightly, like it's pleased with your pace. The clearing behind you vanishes into the trees once more, but in your mind, that bench stays, and the feeling that your voice could change something, even in a world full of cannon smoke and rum-stained maps. Well, it lingers like salt on your lips. The forest light dims as you climb the slope, boots slipping slightly on the leaf-littered path. It's quieter now, less birdsong, more distant wind, like the island itself is holding its breath. Then, just ahead, you spot it. A tall, narrow stone arch, clearly unnatural, clearly deliberate. Etched into the stone is a single name, Isadora of the Shore, and beneath it, First Among Equals. You pass under the arch. A wide clearing opens up, ringed with crumbling columns and the remains of once painted walls. This was once something grand, a sort of pirate senate maybe, or their version of a civic center. At its heart stands a tall wooden chair, the arms wrapped in copper bands now green with age. Not a throne, not quite. It's a seat of discussion. You wander the edges, where the walls are lined with old crates and barrels now serving as makeshift museum displays. On one wall, a mural, sun-faded and chipped, depicts a woman with a shaved head and a telescope. Her cloak flaps in the wind, one boot resting on a map of the Caribbean. This is Isadora. She was no queen, no tyrant, just a leader, elected more than once according to the painted symbols circling her like votes. You count 5. No, 6 sunbursts. That means 6 terms. Her story, pieced together from fragments and oral history, is one of diplomacy, of strategy, and oddly enough, baked goods. Isadora was infamous for her sea bread, dense enough to bruise but oddly comforting. She believed that meetings ran better with snacks. Hard to argue with that. There's a plaque on one barrel, carved in both French and English. She listened more than she shouted. She let others speak first. She turned down leadership twice. And when she accepted it, she gave away her hammock. Not exactly the image of a pirate you were raised with, right? You sit on the edge of the platform and trace the grooves in the wood. It's smooth where countless hands once rested. Behind you, tucked under a loose floorboard, you find a cloth bundle, old, brittle, but preserved. Inside are minutes. Actual meeting minutes. In shaky script. Motion 1, reduce shouting during night votes, past 7 to 2. Motion 2, replace wet maps with waxed ones. Failed, rum budget took priority. Motion 3, promote Isadora to speak with the Spanish envoy. Passed. Unanimously. Unanimously, that's rare, even among pirates. And it wasn't because she was feared, or rich, or loud. It was because she had the trust of the crew. And perhaps more importantly, she knew when to step aside. There's a famous story, scratched into driftwood and now nailed to one of the columns, of the time she lost a vote. She'd proposed turning a captured enemy ship into a mobile hospital. The crew disagreed. They needed the wood to repair their own vessels. Isadora accepted the loss, smiled, and helped cut the masts herself. No sulking, no revenge, just governance. And isn't that what leadership should be? You rise, walking slowly around the circle. You imagine a vote in progress. One person speaking while others nod, grunt, or throw stones at anyone interrupting too much. You picture Isadora holding her ground during debate, but never raising her voice. Calm, strategic, patient. Historians still puzzle over how someone like her rose to power in a culture supposedly built on greed and violence. Some insist she was an anomaly, a rare jewel in a muddy bay. But maybe, just maybe, pirate society wasn't what we thought it was. Maybe it wasn't just brawls and betrayal. Maybe, tucked between raids and storms, there was space for leaders who earned their place. And maybe when they found one, they knew how to hold on to her. You sit once more on the edge of the platform and close your eyes. You can almost hear it now, a quiet murmur, respectful, curious, a meeting underway beneath the stars. The wind shifts. In that moment, you realize something. Democracy, however rough, had found its way into the unlikeliest place, the world of outlaws. And it didn't arrive with swords, it arrived with stories, with trust, with someone like Isadora offering her hammock. You step down and walk away from the platform, but not before whispering, "Thanks for the bread." The path bends again, this time sloping gently downward, toward the sound of distant waves and the flickering promise of open sky. The trees thin out, replaced by low scrub and sand, until you reach what was once a wide beach, now half reclaimed by forest, but still bearing traces of what happened here. Scattered in the sand are planks and timbers, sun-bleached and half-buried, arranged in a broad semicircle. Some are split, others charred. And in the center lies a stone slab, weathered but unmistakably intentional. This was no dining area. This was a courtroom, a pirate courtroom. You step into the circle. The wind hushes. It's easy to imagine the scene. Sailors and smugglers sitting cross-legged on driftwood benches, arms folded, sunburned brows furrowed. In the center, 2 figures stand. One accused, one defender, both barefoot, because apparently that was the rule. There's a small barrel turned upside down at the edge of the circle. a stool for the judge, though sources suggest the role, rotated each case, assigned by lot or by consensus depending on how heated things got. You sit where the jury might have. The sand here is firm, the ground compacted by generations of arguments and verdicts. Nearby, half covered in dune grass, is a long board carved with scratchy lettering. Rules of Fairness, revised 1703. Everyone gets a say, no speaking. Said twice until all have spoken once. No shouting unless it's raining. The goat may observe but not participate. Classic pirates, equal parts justice and nonsense. But the surprising thing? It mostly worked. They held trials, they made judgments, not just for theft or betrayal, but for things like hoarding, gambling, and the most serious of pirate crimes, taking more than your share of the cheese. You find fragments of cases etched into old driftwood signs and broken crate lids. Accused Martin Finger's Bellamy crime. Faking illness to skip watch duty, outcome, found guilty. Sentenced to kitchen duty, plus public apology, in song. Another one reads, case, suspected sabotage of anchor chain. Verdict, inconclusive. Voted to forgive, but keep an eye on salty Pete at all times. And just beside the stone slab, a tiny plaque nailed to a post that reads simply, Order Matters. That's the thing no one ever tells you about pirates. They didn't hate rules, they just hated bad ones. They made their own, tested them in fire and storm and sour stew, and rewrote them when needed. It wasn't perfect justice, but it beat, throwing punches until someone passed out. Historians, of course, are torn. Some dismiss these trials as informal, just excuses to air grievances or humiliate each other with silly punishments. Others argue they represented a true, if ragged, form of common law. And yet here you are, sitting in the sand where it happened, feeling the gravity of that stone slab, the echoes of voices demanding fairness, even among thieves. You press your hand to the rock. It's cool and rough, carved with shallow marks, faint tally lines perhaps, or maybe just the anxious scratches of nervous fingernails awaiting a verdict. Either way, it's real, tangible, serious in its own sun-bleached way. You lie back, letting the sand cradle your shoulders. Above you, the sky is endless. Stars flicker like ship lanterns in the dark. You imagine this same view centuries ago. Same stars, same questions. Who decides what's fair? How do you live together when no one's in charge? For the pirates of this island, the answer was simple. Everyone's in charge, or at least, everyone gets a voice. The wind picks up, scattering grains of sand across your boots. Somewhere behind you, a small rock tumbles from the bench, maybe a ghost verdict, falling late. You smile. Even in the wildest corners of the sea, justice found, a place to drop anchor. You rise from the sand slowly, brushing grains from your sleeves, and head inland again. The wind at your back feels gentler now, like the island is urging you onward. Ahead, something sways lazily in the breeze, a battered pole with a scrap, of fabric flapping at the top. You approach and the cloth becomes clear, a faded patchwork flag. Not black with skulls, not red with warnings. It's balanced, split cleanly down the middle. One side shows crossed oars over a loaf of bread, the other a compass rose ringed with stars. In the center, a stitched circle stitched with mismatched thread, a symbol of cooperation, of choice, of direction shared. This was no banner of conquest, it was a flag of agreement. You look around and realize you're standing in what used to be the island's central square. The wooden posts, worn, smoothed by time, still form a rough perimeter. Between them, dozens of stones lie flat, each bearing marks, some carved, others painted, a few just scratched in with nails or shells. It's a mosaic of identities. One stone bears the image of a fish with legs, another, a crown split in two. Yet another shows a single eye above a cup. These were the pirate households, if you could call them that. Crews, friend groups, factions, alliances. Each with their own symbol, their own say. And every so often they came here to this very square for something special. A flag vote, not for leaders, for values. There's a document nailed to the remains of a post, surprisingly intact. It reads, Quarter-yearly Flag Council, Topic: do we fly the banner of unity or revert to battle colors? Votes 22 unity, 17 battle. Outcome: unity for one more season. Repaint where necessary. No skulls allowed above the bakery. That last line? Probably not a metaphor. The pirates really did have a bakery. Apparently bread was a key. Point of pride. You sit on one of the stones with a dolphin etched into it and think, flying a flag was their way of signaling who they were, not just to passing ships, but to each other. It meant something to wake up and see that fabric in the wind. It told you we chose this together, and that's the beauty of it. These weren't grand revolutions or noble philosophies etched into marble. They were practical compromises, wrapped in symbolism and stitched from sails. Even the color mattered. Some years the flag was blue for calm seas, others green for good crops. Once, apparently, it was bright orange because someone spilled dye and no one wanted to waste it. Historians still argue over the flag's exact origin. Some claim it was inspired by the Iroquois Confederacy. Others say it was just the most intact scrap of cloth available, but everyone agrees the pirates took it seriously. A diary fragment from an unnamed sailor tells of a flag reversal day when the council overturned a previous decision due to a surge in rum-fueled debate. The sailor wrote, "I've never seen so many grown men cry over the shade of a triangle. Democracy is exhausting." You laugh quietly. It echoes against the trees. Above you, the flag still flutters. Worn, yes, but still whole. You imagine someone climbing that post once a season, tucking a new patch onto the canvas, watching as the wind accepted it. It wasn't about the fabric. It was about what they agreed mattered. And sometimes what mattered was shared bread and peace. Other times it was loud voices and red paint and banners of warning. But always, they voted. You rise and step back to look again at the stones, the post, the flag above. It flaps once, twice, then stills, like it's heard enough for now. And you walk on, a little more certain that even chaos can choose clarity when it wants to. The path twists along the island's spine now, higher ground offering you brief glimpses of both sea and canopy. The sky darkens into velvet, and the breeze turns cooler, heavy with the scent of salt and something herbal, maybe bay leaf or old tobacco. You climb a gentle slope and find yourself before a low stone-built structure, more intact than most. It looks like a cellar, half sunken into the earth with a curved roof made of reef stone and tar. A wooden plaque hangs loosely above the entrance. The archive of odd laws. You duck through the doorway and step into a time capsule. The room. Inside is dim but dry. Racks of flat stones, parchment rolls, bits of shell and slate line the walls in clumsy, chaotic order. A cracked lantern dangles from the ceiling, its glass fogged with age. This is where they kept their laws. Not all of them were brilliant, some were absolutely ridiculous, and yet each one is a story. A window into the mind of a society cobbled together from sailors, deserters, former slaves, herbalists, merchants, and misfits from a dozen languages. You step closer to a wooden board and read aloud one of the engraved rules. No person may whistle after dark, lest they summon wind spirits or wake the goat. Charming, but there's more. All elected cooks must taste their own soup. Anyone hoarding socks shall forfeit voting rights until the next rain. If a parrot speaks out of turn during a vote, its owner must provide fruit to all attendees. It's hilarious until it's not, because alongside the silliness there are rules that reflect genuine care. Sick crewmates must be rotated to land when possible. No member shall go more than 3 days without fresh water. No punishment shall be dealt before hearing the accused twice. You pause there. That last one is carved deeper, as if someone re-etched it long after the original had faded, and just above it, scratched into the wall with something sharper than a nail. Speak first, swing later. You sit on a barrel at the center of the room and take it in. The archive isn't organized. It's a mess of overlapping ideas, half-burned fragments, and shell scripts written in more than one language. But it's evidence of people trying, failing, revising, repeating. You find one especially strange item, a flat piece of driftwood painted with a fish and a tiny, smug crown. The note below it reads, Decree 48. The fish is not royalty. It merely looks like it is. We apologize for the confusion. Historians have tried to catalogue this archive before. Most gave up. One referred to it as a jungle of legal doodles, but even that scholar admitted there's a logic to it. Not, say, a logic of empires, a logic of living together without killing each other. You open a wax-sealed jar on a side shelf and pull out a scroll so brittle it flakes at the edges. It's written in careful script, clearly important. A preamble. We, the free crew of Equinox, agree that leadership may pass like the tide, but all men and women here are owed shelter, food, and say, regardless of coin, rank, or beard length. It's absurd and quietly beautiful, because the truth is they weren't trying to be noble. They were just tired of being stepped on by captains and kings, so they stepped sideways, off the map, into a system where even the parrot had boundaries. You roll the scroll gently back and return it to its jar. The roof groans faintly above you. The lantern sways. You glance back at the doorway and realize something. This wasn't a law library. It was a conversation spread over years, a living agreement among the unlikeliest of citizens. And it's still speaking. You step out of the archive, blinking at the night sky. The stars are brighter now, closer even. The air tastes of salt and iron and something sweet, like overripe fruit. You follow a narrow path that slopes down toward the southern edge of the island, where the trees give way to a wide open field. Here, surrounded by moonlit grass, lie the charred remains of what must have been a massive bonfire pit. Around it are stones arranged in concentric rings, seating for dozens, maybe more. You walk between them, kicking aside a faded scrap of cloth, someone's sash, maybe someone important. This was where the pirates gathered, not for combat or trial or lawmaking. This was where they argued, loudly, with snacks. You can still feel the heat of those long-gone fires, the buzz of voices rising like fireflies into the night. This was the arena for public debate, the pirate parliament's true heart. A post stands in the center, once used for drying meat or holding lanterns. Now it holds a small wooden sign scorched at the edges. You squint to read it. Topic tonight. Should we tax rum or steal more of it? You grin. Around the pit are makeshift podiums, just barrels, crates and planks, all facing the central fire circle. On one, someone has carved a tally system. Vertical scratches grouped in fives, votes counted openly by torchlight. It's said that pirates here loved debate night, not because they liked fighting, but because they loved winning with words. There's even a record, burnt at the edges, of a famed argument between Captain Elias Snorebeard and a ship's cook named Delilah. Delilah argued that pickled vegetables should count as currency. Snorebeard said pickles were too emotional. Delilah countered by pickling a copy of the pirate constitution. She won. That story appears in 3 different fragments. You imagine them now, dozens of rough-looking people, sitting cross-legged, passing roasted plantains, heckling, laughing, raising hands or tokens to cast their votes. And when a vote was too close to call, they had rules for that too. A large stone slab nearby is carved with the words, "Tie votes shall be broken as follows: staring contests, coin toss using the old coin, fist duels, non-injurious, rock, paper, scissors, best of 5. No, voting after sunset if someone's already crying." You walk to the edge of the field, where several stones bear the names of past debaters. One stands out, Mina the Quiet. Beneath her name, a quote, "She spoke twice a year. When she did, the vote always changed." You sit on the low stone next to hers, watching the shadows flicker as if ghosts still warm their hands at phantom flames. The debates weren't just entertainment, they were necessary. They voted on everything: supplies, navigation, punishments, even who had access to the fresh mangoes near the northern bluff. There's an entire scroll about the mango incident of 1708, but here's what makes it all matter. They took disagreement seriously without letting it destroy them. Even when tensions rose, even when tempers flared, they returned, night after night, to speak, to listen, to try again. Historians call this field many things: the fire court, the circle of parley, the open mouth. But the pirates themselves had a better name, scratched into an overturned crate near the edge. Of the ring, the place where we don't punch each other yet. It's funny and deeply human, Because even outlaws needed space to speak. Even rebels needed rules for argument. Even pirates needed a place where a cook could change policy with a jar of pickles. You rise, brushing the dust from your hands. The moon is high now, hanging like a coin no one owns. As you leave the field, you swear, just for a second. You hear voices behind you, not angry, not yelling, just debating like they always did. The island narrows as you follow a trail that hugs the cliff's edge, where the sea crashes far below in rhythmic exclamation. The stars above blink patiently, like they've seen this all before. You move carefully, your footsteps muffled by moss and broken shells. Then you hear it, a low, steady creaking, not ominous, just persistent. You follow the sound until the trees part, revealing a makeshift shelter built from driftwood and shipwreck scraps. The boards are warped, but the structure stands proud. At its center, a flagpole leaning slightly to one side, from which a torn bit of crimson cloth still flaps weakly in the breeze. This is what's left of the emergency council shelter. You step inside, ducking under a beam held up by ropes and sea glass. The room smells faintly of charcoal and salt-soaked paper. On the walls, hung with nails and bits of coral, are lists, real ones, with names, dates, and beneath them, words hastily scrawled in charcoal. Storm approaching. Vote. To seek cove or stay anchored. Captain lost overboard. Vote on interim helm. Half the crew ill. Suggest rationing fish heads again. Enemy vessel sighted. Should we run or bluff? This was where democracy didn't wait for clear skies. It acted. In the center of the shelter is a circle of stools, each carved with initials. You run your hand across them. LT, DR. Juno, Hannah again, and something scratched out violently and re-etched as not Tom. A plaque lies crooked in the center. Emergency votes must be called by 3 voices, or one goat in panic. You can't make this stuff up. There's a legend here, a story carved carefully on a wide plank and hung over the door. It tells of the night the sky turned green, when lightning danced horizontally and waves punched the cliff like angry gods. The pirates panicked. Most wanted to flee, but some stayed behind, including a young quartermaster named Sia, who proposed one final vote, to let the crew decide if they would anchor, scatter, or ride it out together. The vote was held by lantern light, while the wind tried to steal the ballots mid-air. The decision, ride it out, together. They lashed the ships in a triangle, shared rations, and survived. Barely. One boat cracked in 2. Another lost its mast, but no one died, and from then on the emergency shelter became sacred. Even the goats weren't allowed to climb on the stools anymore. That's noted twice on different wall carvings. Historians love this moment. Some cite it as proof of pirate resilience. Others as evidence of chaos barely disguised as order. But when you stand here in the dark, with the wind pressing at the walls like a nervous guest, you feel something else. Commitment to each other, to the process. Even when storms loomed and fear gnawed at their ribs, you open a small box near the wall inside stones, each etched with a simple symbol: anchor, eye, flame, wave. Vote tokens, quick choices for quick decisions. You hold one up to the light. It's an eye. The choice for watch and wait, you set it back down because that's what they did. Over and over, faced with uncertainty, they gathered. They voted, sometimes well, sometimes poorly, but always together. You step out into the night. The creaking continues, rhythmic and tired. The storm they feared is long gone, but the votes, they still echo in the rafters. The path veers away from the cliffs now, guiding you through a quiet grove of wind-sculpted pines. The moonlight filters down in scattered pools, and the ground underfoot is soft with fallen needles. It feels peaceful here, serene even. But there's a question growing in your chest, rising with each step. Did they really believe in all this? Or was it just a convenient act? You follow a bend in the trail and come upon a small clearing. In the center, a lone wooden bench facing a crude stone wall. The wall is covered in graffiti, not random scratches, but messages carved with care, layer upon layer, in a dozen hands. I didn't agree, but I stayed. Flinty cheated again. We voted. He's still here. The vote went wrong, and we tried to fix it. I still don't trust Caleb, but I trust the process. You sit on the bench, breathing in the quiet. And for the first time, you let yourself really ask, was this democracy real? Not just procedural, not just symbolic, but meaningful. You close your eyes. And slowly, memories of what you've seen, heard, start to blur together. The ballot. Boxes, the flag votes, the debates over rum, the courtroom of sand and stars, the emergency council shelter that held firm in the storm. You think of Isadora's quiet leadership, of Soup Hannah's carved seat, of the voter who chose someone because they say thank you when I sneeze. These weren't just systems. They were habits, choices made over and over again, not because they were dramatic or heroic, but because they worked. Still, there had to be times it didn't. You scan the wall again. Toward the bottom, nearly buried beneath vines, is one of the oldest inscriptions, deep and crooked, like it was scratched in haste. He lied. We voted anyway. That's it, isn't it? Democracy isn't always built on truth. Sometimes it's built despite the lies. Sometimes it survives even when no one wants to listen, because people cling to the only thread that keeps them from swinging swords or sailing away alone. This island, it wasn't a utopia, not even close. People still cheated, argued, sulked, manipulated. They still made mistakes, terrible ones. But when it mattered most, they came back. They sat down. They voted. Historians try to pin down the intent behind all this. Were the pirates idealists, rebels, accidental philosophers, or just practical people doing what they could to keep the rum flowing and the fists down? The answer, like most history, is probably all of the above. One scholar called it anarcho-meritocratic nautical populism. Another just said, it was a mess, but it was their mess. You run your fingers over one final carving. It's set apart from the others, framed in a knot of driftwood and bone. We were not perfect, but we were heard. And that, more than any flag or scroll or seafaring courtroom, might be the legacy of this forgotten place. You stand slowly, stretching your back, and take one last look at the wall. It's not polished, it's not poetic, but it's honest, a monument to trying, again and again. And you walk away with the same strange feeling the pirates must have had every time they gathered around the fire. Ballots in hand, hearts uncertain. It's not always about winning. Sometimes it's just about showing up, and speaking, and listening, even when you think it won't matter, because sometimes it does. The trees grow denser again as you move north, but the path is still clear, just wide enough for one person, just worn enough to say, someone used to come this way often. The air feels different now, still, but not empty, full somehow, like the island is leaning in to listen. Eventually, the trail opens onto a bluff overlooking the eastern shore. No structures, no fire pits, just wind and grass and the wide, unblinking sea. But then you see them, etchings, lines and shapes carved directly into the flat stone beneath your feet. At first, they look like idle doodles, spirals, waves, tally marks, then more intentional. Suns, ships, moons, and finally, maps. These were navigation stones, part chart, part story, part memory. Pirates didn't always trust paper. It burned too easily, so they carved their past into the island itself. You kneel down, tracing the edge of one large engraving. A ship sails from west to east, flanked by smaller symbols. A bottle, a book, a hand with two fingers raised. Above it is a word, faded but still legible. Consensus. It's a map of a decision. You scan the stones around you and realize this whole bluff is covered in records of votes. Not the usual kind. These were bigger. Where to go, who to trade with, what to risk, and each one marked here with its outcome, sometimes cryptic, sometimes painfully clear. One stone reads, voted to welcome the strangers. 3 joined, 1 betrayed us. We forgave 2. Another, split vote, raid or share. We shared. The storm took both ships anyway. And another, deeper than the rest. All voted yes, we never speak of it. You sit back, letting that last one settle in your bones. Democracy doesn't erase pain. It only makes room for it. Shared responsibility doesn't guarantee peace, but it does create witnesses. Someone voted for something here and remembered it forever. You wonder who came back to carve these, who carried the guilt or pride or complicated middle space of both. It wasn't always noble, it wasn't always right, but it was recorded, and that matters. Historians almost missed this place entirely. It wasn't on any early map of the island, but once found, the stone maps changed everything, because they showed that pirate voting wasn't just for rum or rope or leadership. They voted on morality. What to do when the Spanish ship asked for help. Whether to bury the coins or spend them on rebuilding the dock. If they should rescue a stranded whaler who once fired on their crew. They didn't always choose well, but they chose. And sometimes, that's the most human thing of all. You lie back on the warm stone, staring up at the sky. The stars above look the same as they did for them. You wonder if someone once lay right where you are, wondering what the vote would mean tomorrow, or next week, or 50 years later. Maybe they hoped someone like you would come find it. Maybe that's why they carved it in stone. A breeze moves through the grass soft as breath. The sea crashes somewhere far below, constant and indifferent. But this place, it remembers. You rise, and with one last glance at the etched ships and tangled symbols, you walk toward the tree line again. Some votes are temporary, but some carve deep. The trees ahead form a narrow corridor, their trunks twisted like old ropes, their canopies woven tight enough to muffle even the moonlight. It's darker here, quieter, not in the way of silence, but in the way of expectation, like something is waiting at the end of this path. And it is, because as you follow the final bend, you step into a place that doesn't quite belong to this world anymore. A grove, perfectly circular, with soft moss underfoot, and standing stones arranged in a deliberate, watchful ring. The trees curve around it protectively, like ribs around a heart. This is not a ruin, this is a sanctuary. At the center, surrounded by small, flat rocks, is a single seat. No more than a stump, really, but carved smooth with years of use. It faces nothing and everything all at once. And on the rock directly in front of it, 4 words have been chiseled in quiet reverence. Speak as if heard. You step into the circle, slowly, instinctively lowering your voice, even though no one is here. Or maybe because no one is here. This was the pirates' listening place. No voting, no debating, no laws, just speaking. One voice at a time. You walk the outer circle, reading the faint inscriptions etched into the stones. They aren't laws or rulings. They're confessions, hopes, and truths. Each one shorter than a whisper, but louder than most shouts. I didn't mean to lie. I wanted to go home. I still miss the dog. I wish I'd said thank you. I pretended to be brave. One stone bears a single word. Sorry. Another. Enough. And one cracked down the middle. Hope. You sit on the central stump, the moss cool beneath your legs, and you understand. This was where pirates went not to decide, but to be honest. With themselves, with each other, with the space between. There's a legend, half journaled, half rumor, about a pirate named Jonah Ninefingers who once lost a vote, then came here and stayed for 3 days without food, speaking only to the trees. When asked what he'd been doing, he replied, making peace with the part of me that wanted revenge. That story, likely half true, half embellished, but that doesn't make it any less important. Because here, truth mattered, even if no one else was listening, especially then. Some historians dismiss this place as a superstition, a ritual circle, an emotional outlet, but the smarter ones, the quieter ones, they say this was the foundation, because voting and courts and flags all need something beneath them. A place where people sit with their own failures, their own choices, their own need to be heard. And sometimes the most democratic act is simply telling the truth when no one asks you to. You lean back slightly, eyes half closed, the stones around you standing guard like ancient friends. And in this soft dark, the island doesn't ask anything of you. It just holds space and waits. You leave the listening grove slowly, like you're leaving a room where someone is still speaking, even if no words are said. The path ahead winds downward, toward the southern beach where the tide has come in quietly. The moon rests heavy over the waves, and the stars hang like lanterns for the closing scene. The boat is waiting for you. Not the same one you came in on. This one is older, a little battered, tied loosely to a rock with rope frayed by years and salt. Someone meant for you to find it. Or maybe the island decided it was time. You hesitate, because even after all the ballots and benches, flags and fire pits, it's hard to leave this place. Not just because of what happened here, but because of what still echoes here. Before you step in, you take one last look at the island, and suddenly you see it, not as ruins, not as fragments, but whole, the pirate parliament rising from the misty dock, the laughter around the vote fire, the emergency council shouting over thunder, Soup Hannah wagging a spoon in warning, the flag of unity snapping against the sea breeze, Isadora of the shore tying her hair back before standing to speak, and most vividly, dozens of people, dusty, sunburned, strange, alive, listening, speaking, voting, failing, trying again. They were not perfect, they were not mythical, they were not a joke, they were real, and the thing they built, patched with rope, bartered with mangoes, painted with jokes and laws and regrets, mattered, if only to them, if only for a little while. You step into the boat. It rocks gently, as if surprised, or relieved. You untie the rope and the current takes you before you even lift an oar. As the island recedes behind you, you notice something strange. No matter how far you drift, you feel its pull, like you're still tethered by all that intention, all that effort, all those voices, not loud, not perfect, but steady. And you realize that's all democracy ever really is. A bunch of people agreeing, just for a while, to share a direction, even if it's hard, even if it's flawed, even if the goats disapprove. Final 300 words, lull and closure. The sea smooths out beneath you. The boat glides gently now, no oars needed, just rhythm and drift and the soft hush of water against wood. Your eyes grow heavier with each sway. Behind you, the island fades into darkness, not gone, just blurred, as if wrapped in fog once more, waiting for another curious soul to stumble ashore. The stars above blink slower now, patient and kind. You breathe deep, the salt air curling into your lungs like a lullaby. Somewhere nearby, the faintest sound of a wind chime, maybe a creaking mast, maybe just your memory playing tricks. And in your mind, you still see the carved stones, still hear the quiet votes, still feel the weight of stories etched in firelight. And fig leaves. History isn't made by kings, only written by them. But here, on this forgotten island, the voices didn't disappear. They were small, but they spoke, and maybe that's all any of us hope for in the end. To be heard at least once, to be counted, even in chaos, to cast a vote, even if the storm is coming. So let your thoughts drift now, soft and unhurried. Let the tide take you gently, not to shore, but to rest. The island is still there, in the quiet places between sleep and waking, and if you listen, you might just hear someone say, your voice still echoes here.